Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to our 2020 School of Nursing Homecoming Celebration and our presentation of the Distinguished Alumni Award for Nursing Excellence. We are joined today by our 2020 recipient, Ramona Cheek, class of '81, and by our current Illinois Wesleyan president, President Georgia Nugent. I ask her to begin with some welcoming remarks. The beauty of a remote world is we will have President Georgia Nugent join us shortly. And I'll begin with some opening comments. This year's an exciting year for the School of Nursing as we continue to welcome record enrollments representing our sustained commitment to diversity. This is our first remote homecoming and our 30th recipient of the Distinguished Alum Award. We're also celebrating the 61st anniversary of the founding of our 4-year Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree at Illinois Wesleyan. Our rich history dates back to the Brokaw School of Nursing, which was founded in 1902 and is now Carl Broman Medical Center. The formal relationship between Illinois Wesleyan and Brokaw can be traced back to 1923, when an agreement between the two institutions established a 5-year degree program. Then in 1958, Illinois Wesleyan's Board of Trustees voted to establish the Brokaw Collegiate School of Nursing at Illinois Wesleyan, and the doors opened in 1959, which was the first year of our 4-year program leading to the BSN. Illinois Wesleyan has played a significant role in nursing education, and we began recognizing distinguished alums in 1990, several of whom are with us remotely today. Many of our current students are with us as well or have voiced a plan to watch our celebration remotely. Please know that we've exceeded our enrollment projections and strengthened our diversity initiatives in the School of Nursing, which is particularly germane to the remarks you're about to hear from Mona. Of our 205 students, 29 are men. Men, as an underrepresented group in nursing, represent about 14% of our enrollment, and I'm excited to tell you that 59 students in the School of Nursing are students of color. That represents almost 30% of our student nurses. Very different experience than Mona had when she was here in the late 70s and early 80s. So before I turn the microphone over to Ramona Cheek, I want to tell you a little bit about her and thank our Distinguished Alum Award Committee, Barb Nathan, class of '80, Kathy Turnquist, class of '66, Ann Eckhart, class of 2003, for selecting this year's recipient, Ramona Cheek. Ramona is currently the Chief Nursing Officer for Mercy Health Fairfield Hospital in Ohio. She previously served as the Director at Premier, a North Carolina-based healthcare performance improvement alliance, where she consulted with hospitals and clinics in the areas of quality, safety, performance improvement, regulatory and accreditation preparedness, as well as nurse leadership development. She started her nursing career as a medical surgical staff nurse at Mercy Hospital, which was Covenant Medical Center in Urbana, where she served as a nurse manager, a nurse educator, a patient educator, and eventually was the medical surgical clinical nurse specialist specializing in diabetes education and wound and ostomy management. I was thinking as I read that, you're going to hear Ramona talk about her younger sister, Dr. Monica Hall, one of our faculty members, and it sounds like Mona was studying diabetes before you, just saying. Ramona was also a medical surgical CNS at Spartanburg Regional Medical Center in South Carolina, and then returned to the Midwest, specifically to Illinois, to be the manager of quality and special projects at Carle Foundation Hospital, where she also served as the director of quality and the chief nurse officer and vice president of patient care and quality. We're so proud that Ramona received her Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree from Illinois Wesleyan, and then went on to earn her Master of Science in Adult Health Nursing from the University of Illinois at Chicago. She holds the Certified Professional Certificate in Healthcare Quality, signifying her professional and academic achievement in patient safety and healthcare. We look forward to her remarks today entitled Female, Black, and Fat, the challenges and joys of navigating through life with labels, as we celebrate Mona's achievements and commitments to others. So delighted to welcome you home and to have you here with us today. Mona Cheek.
Thank you, Dr. Fultz. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you for this honor as a selection for the Illinois Wesleyan University 2020 Distinguished Alumni Award for Excellence in Nursing. I am grateful and I am humbled, and the fact that 2020 is a year of the nurse and the midwife makes it even more special for me. Female, Black, and fat. These are the labels that I was born with and the descriptors that I have contended with for a lifetime. Each label has at times been a blessing and at times a challenge, at times a hindrance and at times a help, at times a source of great joy and at times a source of sorrow. Female. The heroes in my life, with the exception of my father, have all been female. I start with my mother and grandmother, who taught me the meaning of being a strong female. My grandmother, Ethel Richardson, came to live with my family the summer before my freshman year in high school. She was coming out of her second marriage and had come to help my mother when she was pregnant with my youngest sister, Nikki. My grandmother, whom I called Mommy after, because I could not pronounce Ethel, was a great woman, and she made many sacrifices for her family. One of the biggest sacrifices that she made was leaving her daughters in the care of her mother in North Carolina, and then moving to New York City in order to take work as a maid to earn money to send her daughters to college. And I'm proud to say that they both graduated from Bennett College in North Carolina. She wanted them to have a better life than what she had. She did not want them to work in the tobacco fields and the cotton fields as she had, and she accomplished that. This is a woman who only got as far as the 8th grade in her own education, a fact that I did not know until I was in college, because my grandmother was one of the smartest women that I knew. She knew all current events. She was keen on politics. She loved sports. She was a prolific reader, with her biggest reader, the biggest book that she read being the Bible. My grandmother loved living in New York. She loved the hustle and the bustle. She loved the sights. She loved the busyness. She loved the neighborhoods. But when it became obvious that her second marriage was not going to survive, and that she needed to leave in order to retain her health and her personhood, she came to live with us in Rantoul. She came to us with little more than the clothes on her back, but she came with joy and optimism. It was wonderful, wonderful growing up in a multi-generational household, and it was powerful to grow up witnessing the strong bond between a mother and a daughter. It was affirming to grow up in a household of strong women role models. I also had the experience of working with my grandmother, for after my youngest sister became a little bit older, she went back to work at the age of 67 at a telephone cable company. And she worked there until the age of 77, when they had a reduction in force, and she thought it was probably fair that she be the first to go at age 77. My grandmother lived with my family for almost 30 years until her death. My mother was one of the strongest females that I've ever known. She had the greatest capacity for love and had a great love for her family, for children from all walks of life, and for sports, especially college basketball or any sport in which her children or her grandchildren participated. She believed that everyone had a gift and great potential. She loved to laugh, and those of you who know Dr. Hall can kind of hear her laugh in Dr. Hall's laugh. And she really could find humor in every situation. My mother died of pancreatic cancer in 2012. And her last words to her children were, "I don't want any boo-boo faces. You will celebrate my life. You will laugh. You will have fun." And we did. My mother instilled in me the importance of family and that you could count on your family. She taught me that being part of a family was like being part of the greatest team, with each person having unique and profound contribution to bring to the table. She didn't expect for us to be all cookie cutter stamped. She loved us for our differences, and all of her children were very different in their talents. I first learned the importance of synergy and that the whole is so much more than the sum of the parts from my mom. I learned that you might not be able to move mountains by yourself, but you could with your family. My mother was a woman of great faith, and she instilled that faith in all her children. She believed in the goodness of people and that everyone was capable of great deeds, especially her children. She was unwavering in her belief in me and in my abilities, and that gave me confidence and strength when sometimes the feedback I got from the world would leave me questioning and in doubt. Black. When I was young, the term that was used to delineate my race was Negro. Or if I was in the South, because my parents were from North Carolina and we would go there summers for vacation, I heard the word colored to refer to me. But one of the first things that I can remember from my youth is say it loud, "I'm Black and I'm proud." I remember when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated and seeing for the first time my parents exercising their civic voices when it appeared that the local station in Minot, North Dakota was not going to televise his funeral. My father was in the Air Force, and so we were stationed in Minot, North Dakota in 1968. But it was through them exercising their civic voices that I understood the power of how many voices could make a change. My parents wrote letters, they made phone calls in order for their voice to be heard about the importance of televising Dr. King's funeral. And the funeral was covered by the local station. That's phenomenal that in 1968, they were able to do that in North Dakota. Being Black has given me a perspective on the world that I would not change because it is my reality. Being Black means that I have and will face discrimination. I will have a decreased life expectancy when compared to my white sisters, and a likelihood of facing irregularities in the justice system. And I think that Breonna Taylor brings that point home. Being Black has taught me that sometimes I will be judged by the color of my skin rather than the content of my character. I remember once being told by a substitute teacher that unless I made straight A's, I had no business talking in class. It was with great pleasure that I told the teacher I did indeed make straight A's, a fact that was confirmed by a teacher next door. Being Black has opened some doors for me, and it's closed others. Being Black has also given me the opportunity to develop my sense of empathy. I think one of the greatest senses that you can have as a nurse, and acknowledge that sometimes those negative feelings and vibes that I receive is not what I want to transmit to others. That intersection of being Black and being female always carries the risk of being thought of as less than. At times being invisible, at times being hypervisible, like being followed around in a department store and having your packages inspected by security officers who were suspicious of you shoplifting. My sister, Monica, tells a story of when she was an undergraduate of going to a college recruiting event with a fellow student who happened to be white. And when one of the recruiters looked up at the sign-up sheet, asked the white friend, "Oh, did they have a sister that was in the master's program at the U of I?" The friend said, "No." But Monica said, "But I do." I also remember the first time that others could feel less than adequate because they were not Black. My college advisor at Illinois Wesleyan, Barb Beeler, during a meeting one day confessed that she felt inadequate, that she could not be the role model I needed in nursing because she was not a Black nurse. I remember looking at her puzzled and saying, "I have plenty of Black role models that I can look to. What I need for you to be is a nursing role model." Fact. This has perhaps been the toughest label and description to carry. Being fat has led to people making all sorts of inferences and reaching all sorts of conclusions. Being a fat child leaves you open to being bullied by fellow students. My brother and I were in more than one squabble with fellow students, making it clear that name calling was not acceptable. My parents instilled in their children that we did not have to be passive in defending ourselves against bullying or name calling. While we never had their permission to start a fight, we did have their permission not to accept negative treatment and to do what we felt we needed to do. When you're fat, you're assumed to be lazy, unmotivated, undisciplined. And when you're fat and in healthcare, those feelings and thoughts are magnified. How can you be in healthcare and appear to be unhealthy? How can you talk the walk and not walk the walk? When you're fat, there's a tendency to make up your perceived faults by being overly upbeat, happy, optimistic, jovial, what I call the Santa Claus effect. Such was the case for me for at least the first part of my life. I would make fun of myself before others could make fun of me. When you're fat, there's a tendency for others to dismiss your thoughts, your feelings, and your opinions. You feel that you must work harder, be better, be smarter, in order to have the same impact that your skinny counterparts have. My weight had an impact on my application process here at IWU School of Nursing. During the 1970s, part of the process of being accepted into the School of Nursing was to go through an interview. And during this interview process, I was told by an instructor in the School of Nursing that she had concerns about me and how I would function as a nursing student. The concerns weren't about my mental abilities, but about my weight. And she said she was concerned how I would do in the clinical setting because patients' rooms were small and there was not that much room between beds in a semi-private room. Also at Illinois Wesleyan, I had the opportunity to apply for a job, I think it was my junior year, at what was then known as the Career Development Center. And I did not get the job. And they had an opportunity for you to debrief for how the interview process went and what you could have done better during their interview. And during that debriefing session, I was told I didn't get the job because of my appearance and my weight, and that I probably would not make it in corporate America because of my weight. It was okay. The job that I got instead was as an application lab assistant in the School of Nursing, one of the funnest jobs I had while I was here at IWU. So I always remember when God closes a door, a window opens, or there's opportunity somewhere. Female, Black, and fat. Words that describe me, but they don't explain me. Being female gives me the freedom to be strong and fully resilient and to know my rights. Being Black has taught me to work harder, be smarter, be resilient, and to know my rights. Being fat has taught me to search for the golden people instead of looking at the dirt. To know that you cannot and should not and must not judge a book by its cover, and to know and accept that life is unfair and that sometimes people will judge you and dislike you solely based on your appearance. Nursing. Nursing chose me. I say this because I have no recollection of having chosen it. I did not pretend to be a nurse when I was a child. I remember pretending to be a teacher, a secretary, and an international spy, which is really what I wanted to be until I found out being short and Black and fat did not make you blend in as a spy needed to. But I don't ever remember wanting to be a nurse. In fact, the first time I stepped foot in a hospital was during my preclinical session to get ready for my very first clinical day. Although that was more than 40 years ago, I remember my first clinical day like it was yesterday. I am very proud that nursing did choose me. My oldest and my dearest and greatest friends are nurses. I am the very proud sister of a nurse, and I have not one, not two, but 3 nieces who are majoring in nursing. Being a nurse has given me great opportunities and wonderful adventures. I've been a bedside nurse, a nurse manager, a patient educator, a nurse educator, and a clinical nurse specialist. I've been able to work with patients and nurses from all walks of life. I've specialized in medical surgical nursing, wound and ostomy management, diabetes education, healthcare quality and patient safety, and nursing administration. And I've had the privilege of consulting across this nation. I've had roles at the patient's bedside, and I've had roles supporting those at the bedside. There are many things that I remember in my long and varied career in nursing. I remember the first birth I witnessed. I remember the first patient death I saw, and it was as a student here. It was a stillborn baby, and the dignity that you give to a person in death. I remember the very first patient I performed CPR on. I remember caring for the very first patient in my hospital who died from AIDS. I remember teaching a 3-year-old how to test her own blood sugar and to give her own injections. I remember the first and only time I wore my nurse's cap at work. I didn't even have a nurse's cap. The pictures that we took with the nurse's cap on, we had one cap that we all borrowed, that we all had. And it wasn't until a patient begged me to wear a nurse's cap. Jane Brew happened to have a clinical class at the hospital that I was working at. So she ran back to Bloomington, went to the bookstore, bought my cap so that I could wear it for a patient. I still have my cap, but I only wore it that one day. I remember the first time I sat at the bedside of a patient with her husband as she took her last breath. I was reminded by Nathan Walsh, who's a surgical nurse at Carle Foundation Hospital, that it is the moments that you remember in nursing. And I agree with that. It is the moments that you remember, and cherish those moments. Being a Black nurse has set the stage for me being the first several times. I was the first staff nurse to chair a hospital-wide hospital committee. I was the first Black nurse educator, the first Black medical surgical clinical nurse specialist, 2 different hospitals in 2 different states, and the first Black chief nurse officers, 2 different hospitals, 2 different states. Nursing has taught me much. It has taught me to believe in miracles. It has taught me that sometimes life is not fair. It has taught me the importance of presence. And I think that's an important one, especially in this day and age, that sometimes it's just being there that makes a difference. It's not doing, it's being. Nursing has taught me the importance of teamwork and brought to light the concept that it takes a village. It no longer suffices to be an individual hero in nursing. You must have processes that allow everyone to do the right things at the right time, because it's too burdensome for everyone to try to be a hero. Nursing has taught me to be strong, to be agile, to be vulnerable, to be tenacious, to be humble, to be outspoken, and sometimes to be outrageous. One of those outrageous times I remember is I and my mentor, Leslie Drew, one time dressed up as Roman gladiators with swords and shields to go into a medical executive committee to make an announcement about nurse staffing that we knew the physicians were not going to be happy with. But they were so busy looking at us in costumes when we made the announcement, they forgot to get upset. And we're really trying to figure out why we were dressed up. And we went in full garb. I mean, we had the helmets on, we had the shield, we had a sword. Both of us walked into the room. And then all of a sudden you can see as we make the announcement, you hear a laughter at the end of the room as they finally got why we were dressed up as gladiators coming in. And it diverted all the angst that they had about what we were going to do. Nursing has been responsible for some of the highest highs and the lowest lows that I've experienced in my life. And I would say this year of 2020 with COVID, both of those highest highs and lowest lows have sometimes happened in the same day. In March, we walked into a disease that we knew nothing about. We did not even know if we had enough equipment to protect those at the front lines of care. But to see nurses, how they gathered in support of the patient and did what needed to be done was tremendous, the highest high. Being scared and really not knowing if we had the supplies and guarding those supplies as if my life depended on it because I knew others' lives depended on it was some of the lowest lows. But I was never so proud to be a nurse as during those times. Mercy Health Fairfield Hospital in Fairfield, Ohio, is where I currently have the honor and the privilege to practice the art and the science of nursing. Some of the finest people in the profession of nursing have chosen Mercy Fairfield as a place that they practice their profession. The nurses there make me proud every day for the care, competence, and compassion that they demonstrate every day to meet the needs of our patients. Mercy Fairfield, we just received our second magnet designation. The magnet designation is the highest recognition for a nursing department from the American Nurses Credentialing Center that can be received. And we received our second designation in 2018. Nursing has been a calling and a cause for me. It has given me the most fulfilling career, a lifetime of memories, friends who have become family, and helped define me and accepted me as female, Black, and fat. I end with a poem by Maya Angelou called Continue. My wish for you is that you continue. Continue to be who and how you are, to astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness. Continue to allow humor to lighten the burden of your tender heart. Continue, in a society dark with cruelty, to let the people hear the grandeur of God in the peals of your laughter. Continue to let the eloquence elevate the people to heights they only imagined. Continue to remind the people that each is as good as the other and that no one is beneath nor above you. Continue to remember you in your own young years and look upon favor upon the lost, the least, and the lonely. Continue to put the mantle of your protection around the bodies of the young and the defenseless. Continue to take the hand of the despised and diseased and walk proudly with them in the high street. Some might see you and be encouraged to do likewise. Continue to plant a public kiss of concern on the cheek of the sick and the aged and the infirm, and count that as a natural action to be expected. Continue to let gratitude be the pillow upon which you kneel to say your nightly prayer, and let faith be the bridge you build to overcome evil and welcome good. Continue to ignore no vision which comes to enlarge your range and increase your spirit. Continue to dare to love deeply, to risk everything for the good. Continue to float happily in the sea of infinite substance which set aside riches for you before you had a name. Continue. And by doing so, you and your work will be able to continue eternally. Thank you very much for your time and attention and for this honor.
I wish, Ramona Cheek, class of '81, you could hear the thunderous applause coming from the remote world. I've had the pleasure as a panelist watching President Georgia Nugent smile and respond to your poignant remarks. And it's my pleasure at this time to introduce her so she can give a homecoming welcome. And then we're going to follow her remarks with a Q&A session from our participants. So, President Nugent.
So sorry. When will I get Zoom right? Thank you very much, Vicki. And Ramona, I wanted to say that I'm sorry I haven't had the opportunity to meet you before, but I can see just from listening to you give your wonderful remarks how well deserved this award as the Distinguished Nursing Alumnus for 2020 is, and what an honor it is to present it to you. I was truly privileged to hear your remarks. They were brave, they were inspiring, they are exactly the kinds of thoughts that we all need to help us through this very, very difficult time. So I'm sorry I arrived a few minutes late. Zoom world is always a little unpredictable, but I truly was honored to hear you, and I hope that in the near future, we will have an opportunity to meet. I'm sorry that we can't all be here to offer that thunderous applause so that you can actually hear it here on the campus. But again, congratulations, and thank you for your wonderful words.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Nugent. For those of you who are unaware, Mona's joined in this empty campus community by her sister, Dr. Monica Hall, and her niece, Anissa Hall. So her family unit is appropriately sequestered in classroom 201. So I want to begin with some questions that have come through the chat. The first comes from one of our first year students, Liv, and I had to smile because as you might imagine, students are completely immersed in their academic study, but Liv wants to know, how did you navigate earning your graduate degree while working full-time as a nurse? So tell us, how did you make that happen?
Well, it's interesting. During those times, I actually was a nurse manager when I first decided I was going to go back to grad school. And I really felt, and I was immersed in the nurse manager role, and I felt like I could not do that. And being a nurse manager, you heard me talk about presence, and it's really important to be present when you're a nurse manager. And you're there, it seems like, all the time. And I felt that I couldn't be there and give the hours that I thought the job needed and the hours that I thought school needed. So then I became, I decided that I needed to change and go into the education department where I could have more flexible hours. And so I joined the education department, and actually I was so torn about giving up my manager position that I had a terrible first interview. And in fact, my interview was so terrible that the department director came back and said, you're going to have to interview again because I can't hire you based on that interview. She has since become one of my dearest friends. So I interviewed again, but it was by switching. I went to an education position. Back in the days when I went back to school, nothing was done remotely or on the computer. You had to be in class. And we had classes during the daytime and at night, and times I had to commute to Chicago. So having a job that was flexible, because in education, you did classes, you taught at all sorts of different times. So I could maneuver and adjust my schedule to allow me to go to school and to work full time. So that's how I did it.
I'm encouraged of first year students already thinking about graduate study.
Don't get it.
I know, Mona, and you know this as well. We at Illinois Wesleyan, we don't talk about if you go to graduate school, but when you go to graduate school. So
that's completely true. Yeah, there was no option. I knew I was going to go back to graduate school, and I waited about 6 years before I returned to go back to school.
Yeah. So Liv, I'm excited about your future. So our next question comes from a 1989 Illinois Wesleyan graduate who happens to be one of our faculty colleagues. Dr. Knoll wants to know, what advice could you give nursing students who find themselves in situations of discrimination, whether that's for an attribute that they can't control or for something else? So tell us more about your lived experience as well as the wisdom you've acquired from navigating that journey.
Here's what I would say. I would say going to Illinois Wesleyan gave me such a sense of confidence in my abilities as a nurse. And I guess growing up in the family that I grew up gave me confidence in my abilities as a person, that even when I faced discrimination, I always it was an outward attribution. It was never about me, but a fault that other people had if they didn't see my talents. I think the confidence that I went in with was disarming. I have a story that I tell. When I decided, when I was in South Carolina and I came back to the Midwest, I decided I needed to get back to the Midwest to be closer to family. I interviewed for a position. It was called the Manager of Nursing and Special Projects. And little did I know that when I was interviewing for this position, that this person was looking for someone that was very left brain, very analytical, very numbers oriented. And those that know me know that those aren't my talents. I'm more right-brained. I'm more visual. I'm more about teamwork and feelings. And so I was not at all what this individual was looking for the job. And she said to me at the end of the interview, why should I hire you? And my answer was, I will make you laugh. and she hired me. So I do think it's a sense of humor that you have that helps with discrimination too. And recognizing that some people might discriminate because they don't know, and trying to overcome that ignorance with giving them information that goes against what they think that they know is the best words of advice that I have about that.
And certainly as we grapple with systemic racism across the country, our university is not immune to that as well. And so I'm wondering if you could talk about your experience at Illinois Wesleyan in terms of being surrounded or not surrounded by what students of color, what we now call allies, although I don't know that that term existed in the early 80s. But what was Illinois Wesleyan like for you as a Black woman?
I think for me to answer that question, you have to understand my background. As you heard me say in my remarks, my father was in the Air Force. So I spent a lot of my time going from place to place. And I think that when you're in the Air Force or when you lead a military life, it's not about your race. It's whether you're, it's about being American versus non-American. I lived some formative years from the ages of 4 to 8 in the Azores. So I was surrounded by people who were not from the same country. And so I think that during that bond, I didn't see myself as Black, especially. I saw myself more as an American during those times. I would say what I have learned as I've grown older and wiser and understand my upbringing is that I spent a lot of my time what's called assimilating, fitting into the world that I lived in, and maybe not bringing my unique self. I think one of the beauties of growing older is you do become more your unique self. But I had to understand first that I spent a lot of time assimilating and trying to be what the world wanted me to be. And I might have done that a little bit when I was at Wesleyan, just trying to fit in, trying to blend in. I was not a member of the Black Student Union, as it was known then. I was a member and a nursing student. I was one of 3 Black nursing students at the time. I think that the study and the preparation of being a nurse brings incredible bonds between nursing students. I mean, you spend your time studying and preparing, going to clinicals, because you are learning to take care of lives and problems. And so that commonness, that fellowship of nurses, I think is what helped me survive here at Illinois Wesleyan.
And I would say that's alive and well today in the School of Nursing. That's exciting to hear. Well, your brother-in-law gave you a shout out. He said that your words were powerful and thought-provoking. And he just, again, loves you and your amazing story. So Sam happens to be an Illinois Wesleyan grad as well. So that's really exciting. Our next question says, I love working at the bedside. How do you know when you're ready to take on a position in nursing administration? Maya is our person asking next steps.
You know what? I think you slowly take on certain leadership positions. You become involved in nursing committees. You become a charge nurse. You become an assistant manager. I think that's the best way of knowing whether or not you're ready for a job in nursing administration. And it's not for everyone because the rewards in nursing administration are not as quick to come as the rewards that you get at the bedside. Dr. Hall will tell you, she took a dab in nursing administration and found out it was not for her. I first became a nurse manager probably before I should have, but that just speaks to how well Illinois Wesleyan prepared me for a leadership role in nursing. I became the nurse with leadership and management responsibilities because at the time they didn't want to give me a nurse manager position at the age of 23, so 2 years after I had graduated from Illinois Wesleyan. And during that time, when I first graduated and started working at the hospital, I was the only baccalaureate prepared nurse in my orientation class. And I remember being ridiculed because the nurses there said it took me 4 years to learn what they learned in 2 years. And in 2 years, I was their boss. So, so Wesleyan prepared me well for that. I just happened to like it because I wanted to have bigger influence. And I was outspoken. I think I said that one time. I was very outspoken as a nurse. And when you're outspoken, they say, hey, what are you going to do to solve the problems? And that led me to a career in administration.
Well, we certainly from Illinois Wesleyan particularly watched your ascension at Carle Foundation Hospital and felt proud then, because what a novel accomplishment on so many levels. President Nugent gave you a shout out for humor and agreed that a smile and laughter goes a long way. A fellow distinguished alumnus, Mary Herring of the class of 70, asked, from your rich professional experience and your perspective and caring personal qualities, what direction do you feel nursing education needs to take to meet the challenges of future healthcare?
I think one of the skills that we really need to emphasize is that of change management and resiliency to meet what's coming up. I always tell my nurses what we're on now is navigating the white waters of change. And I think that we've always felt like in healthcare, that's what we did, but nothing is preparing us for as rapid a change as we're experiencing right now. So I think resiliency, I think the ability to manage and adapt to change, and I think the ability to learn and to continuously learn is the most important things, because what we're finding is that things that were true even yesterday might not be true today, and you have to continuously learn.
So what's next for you?
You know, I wonder that a lot. I pray every day that I will know when it's time for me to go. I tell everyone that I'm on the downward slope of my career. That makes my boss very nervous, who happens to be a millennial. He's 35 years old, and he said, give me a time frame, give me a time frame. I think that when I'm done with being a chief nursing officer, I would like to go back to diabetes education and work in clinics and work with patients, because that really is why I became a nurse, to get right there at the bedside and to be there with patients.
Well, I certainly wasn't thinking about the end of your career, so I'm glad that you and talked about, again, getting reconnected with direct patient care. I think, again, that's vital for nurse educators and for nurse leaders. You've done some consulting. Is that something you could bring to Illinois Wesleyan? I think about, some of our challenges as a university, as a residential liberal arts university with professional schools. What advice do you have for us?
Oh yeah, I would love to come back.
And Mona, please know this is free advice. We don't have any money to pay you as a consultant, but yeah, what could you offer?
I would love to come back to Illinois Wesleyan. I'd love to lecture in leadership, because I do think that leadership has it's what sets the way, and it's leadership and building that team. And I think that's probably has been my gift, is being able to create synergistic teams that have just been able to do the impossible. I've loved consulting around the nation, because what you find when you do a consulting and you go from hospital, I was in a different hospital every week, and you find that nurses and patients are the same no matter where you go. And that's gratifying to know that. And you see the individual heroes, you see the places where they choose to work, and you're always in awe of nurses and what they do for their patients.
My question prompted President Nugent to put her camera back on and to come back and join us.
I've been listening. I'm just trying to,
Yeah, but I wanted you to hear President Nugent. I said, consult for free. We want your expertise.
But I loved the question and I loved your answer, Mona. We'll be in touch.
Oh, I'd love that.
So your brother Keith has weighed in. He just wants to tell you how inspirational you are, and inspiration to becoming a nurse. You have such a big heart and have always had a calling to care for others. And he says, just ask for SIBS. So simply the best role model for all of us.
Oh. Well, as you can tell, I've had simply the best family, and I couldn't have done it without my family and their support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, again, we are so grateful to honor you with this award. Because we're remote, it's a little different. We have a beautiful plaque that hangs in Shank's Lounge that Mona can see in the windowsill in front of her. So we wanted her to see her name boldly included as our 30th recipient. And when our award presentation ends, I'll be joining Mona and her family to give her a framed certificate that recognizes her honor as our 2020 alum. Oh, Sharon has weighed in too. Let me make sure I don't miss SIBS. She had to make a quick comment and get back to her students. She loves you. Dittos your brother's comments. And again, we've got Dr. Hall, Monica Cheek Hall with us as a colleague. So you're with us, Mona, every day, and Monica. Dr. Hall tells us about how influential you've been. So when I called Mona to tell her that she was the unanimous choice from the Distinguished Alum Committee, I also told her that Monica didn't know and that she could tell her or not tell her, depending on how she wanted to communicate. But I know when Monica learned of your honor, she was equally proud and acknowledged how deserving you are of this award. So you make Illinois Wesleyan School of Nursing proud, and we are so honored to recognize your accomplishments today.
Thank you very much. It has been such an honor and a privilege to be here and to be with you today. So thank you very much for this honor.
Wonderful. So this award ceremony has been taped, and if you have colleagues or classmates or others who couldn't be live with us today, please make them aware of how moving Mona's remarks are today and how relevant they are to some of the current situations we find ourselves in every day. But again, proud to have you as part of the School of Nursing. Thank you, Ramona Cheek, class of '81.
Thank you.